Okay, it's another day working on the layout, and what you see here is a pile of parts I've cut to mount the strip cold tipple control panel. I figured that I needed to get this placed before I made a decision on if I wanted curves in my fascia, which would mean I would have to curve my valances up in clifftop. So I went out and cut all these pieces, just came in. I'm going to put this together and I'll show you where I'm going to mount it, and then think about the curves in the fascia. Well, today was not as productive as I hoped, mainly because I didn't plan on having to put the control panel in here. And this is what I came up with. This was just kind of done on the fly, which is another reason why it took so long. Most of the things I do in here are well planned out ahead of time. I have drawings and know exactly what I'm going to do. I have all the materials, I have all the screws and fasteners and whatever other hardware I need. But this was just me out in the shop with the pile of wood and the parts and just playing around. And that takes a way longer time. And then I had to come up with a way how I was going to mount it on the layout here, and I'll show you what I'm thinking. It's kind of mocked up right at the moment because I need to go get some stuff and I'm out of screws, so it's held together with a minimum amount of screws. But I'm thinking about putting it here in front of the tipple on this one angled board. And what's nice about it is it kind of gives you a good view of it, and you're sort of, if you back up here, take a look at clifftop. If there were two people up here and one was working on the runaround, they'd be kind of going from about here to here. So if there was another person operating and loading a train, they would kind of be off to the side and out of the way, and your line of vision is, or line of sight is almost towards it. You just have to look a little bit that way. So I'm pretty happy with that. And because I decided to put it there, I think I'm going to continue on now with the angled fascia, which really simplifies a lot of things. And again, now I can go ahead and move forward knowing what I'm going to do. I don't have to come up with some strange way how to curve the light and have those LED strips follow that curve. And it actually will make more visual sense now, because it'll look like the design was to put the operator over there, rather than having this weird kind of set of different length boards here. So now it'll go straight and angle in, and there'll be kind of a notch around this thing, and then it will angle back straight to this one, so kind of similar, and then this will just flow up the side here by the car shop. So I think it'll work out well. And I'm kind of mocking up the wiring underneath here. You can see where I've mounted the servo panel down there, which is really nice, being on a mushroom, because I can come in through that service door kind of thing and walk and barely nod my head and come back here and do any kind of maintenance on there without having to even get under bend under the layout. So that will work well. If you look at the panel here, I don't know if you saw the video of this operating a couple of years ago when I built it. One of the things I didn't have on the video is that I've installed little teeny cameras underneath the canopy here, and the cameras are aimed in between the pairs of doors. And then there's I have to get it yet, but I have to get a rotary switch I'm going to put in here to do camera 1, 2, and 3, or whatever, 1, 2, and 3, so maybe 1, 2, and 3. And they play on the screen here, and you do get a good view in here of the doors. But what I have the cameras set up to do is they're all aimed the same way, and I'm actually going to put a little, maybe like a tape line on the screen here, so that I can tell maybe a new operator, I can just say, just fill it to the line, and that's all the higher you need to go. And then once they kind of get used to seeing what the line is, and then they don't have to look at that anymore. But it is kind of a neat feature there. It gives it a different perspective. There are lights underneath there that all light up, so if it were dark, you'd get maybe a better view by looking at the camera here. So I kind of like that. It fits this theme here good. Again, you know, here's the doors here. Here's the lockout ones here that are the in-between doors. And then here's, so this is cart position 1, 2, and 3. And then these are the intermediate ones. But what I did here is I ended up almost screwing this to to whatever this piece of 1x3 is. And then I just happened to kind of just play with this thing here. I thought, ooh, I could make a pivot. And it reminds me back to the story of how I even got modeling the Mans Creek. When I built that first ON30 hopper car, just looking for something to do one day, my HO scale layout was all done, and I saw that Sam Swanson article, and I thought, yeah, it might be neat to have that on the shelf, simply because I just had read through the Mans Creek book to rebuild my coke ovens on my HO scale layout. And I thought, well, I could put that on a shelf as a conversation piece. And I was sitting there just about ready to glue the doors on, and I just kind of went like this. That'd be neat if the doors worked. And then that spurred this entire thing. Well, kind of the same thing here. I was holding this up and I started to pivot, and I thought, well, that would be neat if that pivoted out of the way. So these are just temporary hinges up here. I'm going to get some hinges and lower this down so that's screwed onto the back here. But I'll have to come up with a mechanism that will lock it in place outward. But what I'm thinking about doing is having this hinge, and I'll put a spring back here to, or like a weight to pull the cables out of the way. But what this will allow me to do is pivot this down, and you know, I can use like a magnet or something to hold it up there. And then the curtain, I can just have a flap that I can close. So for example, if I have people over, I can keep this out of the way and nobody bumps it. It kind of opens up the space. But then on operating night, I can pull this out, maybe lock a pin in there, and then we can, you know, separate the curtain and Velcro it back together somehow. And then we can operate, and then it just move this out of the way. And this will be nice to have it out of the way just for general layout work, because it's, you know, it sticks out quite a ways here. So this little gap you won't see here, because the fascia will come down and follow this line right here. So this will just all be behind that. It'll actually just be blended in right where this ends will be the beginning of the valence up, or the fascia up here. But I plan on moving it down a little bit because I want the fascia down at least an inch below this to I just like to have that thinner looking edge on the bottom there, which is kind of ironic because I like thicker edges on the sides. But the curtain I want to have to be back farther here so that it makes it appear that, you know, there's more space for your feet. So the curtain will just follow this edge right along here and kind of come out and go onto there. So that was a long day of just fiddling with that. So one of the other things I did this morning was I started the repair of this car number 9, which broke a piece off here. So I got to make a new one and then weather that, blend that, touch up that chip right there. I had to, these pieces were gone. They went flying. So I had to make new ones of these. So I had to paint those the rust color. And it got me thinking that I have 10 more of these to build, and a lot of this stuff I'm going to 3D print now. When I built these cars, 3D printers were just a dream, and just Shapeways was just coming out, so there's going to be a lot more things I can do with these cars that I couldn't do when I made this first batch. And one of them's going to be, I'm going to make these latches operate. So when you first use the button to open the doors, there'll be a little cam mechanism that'll lower these latches down, and then the doors will go up. At the time, I didn't have any reliable way to do it, and these are actually glued to the door, and the rod is actually cut at the door. So it'll be nice to not see those latches open up with the door. I'll maybe make the little levers lift up. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. Then I've been working on Shea engine parts. I printed those new, and I did the artwork and photo etch some stainless steel bevel gear shields for the sides of the trucks here. This is Shea number 2's rear truck, and then I got to put those on there. And I'm also playing around with a new gear set. I'm thinking about maybe trying to get these really large gears. They look really oversized, but I think I can get these gears in there. And the advantage is that it'll be a 1-to-1 gear ratio instead of a 1 to, I guess it'd be a 4-to-1, 1-to-4. you know, one turn of the axle to 4 turns of the motor, however you want to say that. They go a little too slow for me, and I want to try to speed it up. Plus, these are really giant teeth on these gears, and won't have the problem I'm having now with the gears I have been using somewhere around here, not meshing or losing mesh, going up the grade and stripping teeth out. So it's just a thought. What's really nice about this is I can quickly mock up parts. You know, so I've been mocking up a new gearbox to move the motor over a little bit. So a lot of this stuff I can test, and it all screws on. Oh yeah, there you can see that gear in there. You can see how small the teeth are on that gear compared to how big the teeth are on that gear. So, you know, these are about, it doesn't look like it, but this one is about the same diameter as that one in there. The only difference is that I'll have to have one of these mounted on the motor, so it'll move that gear more over into the middle there a little bit. You can kind of see where it's going to have to come down. And I got to be a little careful, because if I end up going with this, I'll have to take a little bit of material out of the inside frame rail on the chaise so that the truck can pivot. So I'll do what I've got here is I've got kind of a test frame that I printed that had an error in it. Actually, it didn't really have an error. I made an error. I accidentally sanded off the top of the boiler supports, but now it's my test frame. I've got a cheap decoder mounted on here, and since I plug everything anyways, I can just quickly plug in a motor and trucks and kind of use this as my test bed. I throw some lead weights on here and basically run it till things break and then see what broke. But we're making progress. I hope to have 2 running here quick, and then build new trucks for Shay 8, because I blew out the Universal the very first try because I didn't have enough meat in the knuckles there, and so I've reduced the pin sizes on these, and so I got to build a new driveline. And plus, I've come up with some better ideas. Maybe one of them being this gear. So I want to rebuild a new set of trucks for that with a new set of Universals, and then change out the motor in that to a different motor. And then when that's all said and done, I hopefully will be ready to build number 5. I've already got the CAD designs kind of about, I don't know, a little over halfway done. So that's all the progress I made today. Hopefully next time we'll see some lights up in Clifftop.